Amara Thompson was 15 years old and had been saving money for 3 whole years. Every birthday gift, every dollar from her allowance, and every penny she earned from working at the bookstore on weekends went straight into her savings account. She had a goal, and she was determined to reach it. Today was finally the day she could take out the money she needed. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the weather was nice and cool. Amara walked into First National Bank with her savings passbook held tight in her hand. She had counted her money so many times. She had exactly $800 saved up, and she needed every bit of it to pay for a special coding camp. This camp could change her whole future. It could teach her skills that would help her get into a good college and maybe even start her own business one day. The bank was not too crowded. There were a few people waiting in line, and 3 bank workers sat behind the counter. Amara looked around and saw which worker was free. She walked up to the first open window. Behind the glass sat a woman named Patricia. She looked to be in her 40s or 50s, with short brown hair and glasses. Patricia was looking down at some papers on her desk. Amara cleared her throat softly and smiled. Patricia looked up, but only for a second. Her face changed when she saw Amara. The woman's friendly expression disappeared and turned into something cold. Amara tried not to notice. She had dealt with looks like that before. "Hello," Amara said politely. "I need to take out $800 from my savings account, please." She slid her passbook under the glass window toward Patricia. Patricia barely glanced at the passbook. She picked it up with 2 fingers, like it was something dirty. She looked at it for just a moment, then pushed it back across the counter toward Amara. The passbook slid and almost fell off the edge. Amara caught it quickly. "You need a parent or guardian for that," Patricia said. Her voice was flat and unfriendly. She turned her eyes back to her computer screen, acting like Amara was not even there anymore. Amara felt confused. She had taken money out of this account before. Just last year, she took out $60 to buy books for school. The bank worker that day had been nice and helpful. Nobody asked for her mother then. Why was it different now? "I'm sorry, but I've made withdrawals before," Amara explained. She tried to keep her voice steady and calm. "I took out money last year without my mom. My account doesn't need parent permission for amounts under $1,000. Patricia's jaw got tight, her lips pressed together in a thin line. She looked annoyed that Amara was still standing there. "Those are the rules," Patricia said, speaking louder this time. "I'm too busy to argue with you about this. You need a parent. That's final." Amara felt her face get hot. She knew other people in line were watching. She could feel their eyes on her back. Behind her, someone sighed loudly, impatient to get their turn. Patricia looked past Amara and called out, "Next!" She waved her hand, signaling for Amara to move aside. Amara felt embarrassed and hurt, but she stepped away from the window. She moved to the side of the bank lobby, near a table with deposit slips and pens. Her hands were shaking a little as she pulled out her phone. She wanted to cry, but she would not let herself do it here. Not in front of all these people. She called her mother. Dr. Janelle Thompson was at work at the hospital where she was a children's doctor. Amara knew her mother was probably busy with patients, but she did not know what else to do. "Mom?" Amara said when her mother answered. Her voice cracked just a little. "Honey, what's wrong?" Dr. Thompson could always tell when something was bothering her daughter. Amara explained what happened. She told her mother about Patricia and the rules that did not make sense. She told her about being dismissed and embarrassed in front of everyone. Dr. Thompson listened quietly, and Amara could hear her mother breathing deeply, the way she did when she was trying to stay calm. "Stay right there," her mother said firmly. "Do not leave that bank. I'm coming right now." While Amara waited, she stood near the wall and watched the bank. She did not want to just stand there doing nothing, so she observed what was happening. She watched as other customers went up to the windows. She paid special attention to Patricia's window. After a few minutes, A teenage boy walked up to Patricia's window. He looked about 16 or 17 years old. He had blonde hair and was wearing a football jersey from the local high school. Amara watched as he handed Patricia a withdrawal slip. Patricia smiled at him. She actually smiled. Amara could not believe it. "How's the team doing this season?" Patricia asked the boy in a friendly voice. "Pretty good," the boy replied. "We won last Friday." "That's wonderful," Patricia said. She processed his withdrawal quickly. She counted out the cash, handed it to him with a smile, and wished him a good day. The whole thing took less than 3 minutes. The boy walked away with his money. He did not have a parent with him. Nobody asked him for one. These are lame. Amara felt sick to her stomach. She watched as another customer approached Patricia's window. This time, it was a young woman who looked like she might be in college. She had light skin and red hair pulled back in a ponytail. She also made a withdrawal. Patricia was pleasant and helpful. She chatted with the young woman about the weather. The transaction went smoothly. No parent required, no problems at all. Amara understood now. This was not about rules. This was about her. This was about the color of her skin. Patricia had looked at her and decided she was not trustworthy. Patricia had decided she was too young, too suspicious, too something. The rules suddenly appeared, only for her. The realization made Amara angry, but it also made her sad. She thought about all the times her mother had warned her about this. Dr. Thompson had told her that some people would treat her differently because she was black. Amara had experienced small things before, but nothing this direct, nothing this obvious. 30 minutes passed. Amara saw her mother's car pull up outside. Dr. Thompson rushed through the bank doors, still wearing her blue hospital scrubs. Her badge was clipped to her shirt pocket. She looked professional and serious. Amara pointed toward Patricia's window. Her mother nodded and walked straight over there. The line had gotten shorter, so Dr. Thompson did not have to wait long. When it was her turn, she stepped up to the window, with Amara beside her. "Good afternoon," Dr. Thompson said. Her voice was polite but firm. "I'm Dr. Thompson. I understand my daughter was told she needs parental supervision to withdraw money from her account. Can you please explain this policy to me?" 2. Patricia looked uncomfortable. She shifted in her chair and adjusted her glasses. "We have to protect minors," she said. "It's a new protocol." "I see," Dr. Thompson said. "Can you show me this protocol in writing?" "I'd like to see the official policy." 2. Patricia fumbled with some papers on her desk. She opened a drawer and looked inside. She clicked around on her computer, but she could not produce any written policy. "My daughter withdrew money from this same account last year without any issues," Dr. Thompson said. "What changed?" Patricia's face turned red. She looked flustered. I don't know about that. I'm just following the rules. I was told." "I'd like to speak with your manager," Dr. Thompson said calmly. Patricia's eyes widened. "The manager is unavailable right now. He's in meetings all afternoon." 6-1. "We can come in one strum. We can manager in 21. We can stay to state part of arm. And he tended be a varm. We can states to arm." Dr. Thompson looked at her watch. Then she looked at Patricia. "We'll wait," she said simply. Dr. Thompson pulled out her phone right there in the bank lobby. She scrolled through her contacts and found the name she was looking for. Amara watched her mother's face. She knew that look. Her mother was done being patient. The phone rang twice before someone answered. "James. It's Janelle." "Doctor," Thompson said. "I need your help with something. My daughter and I are at First National Bank, and we've just experienced what I believe is clear discrimination." Amara could not hear what the person on the other end was saying, but she watched her mother's shoulders relax just a little bit. Dr. Thompson explained everything that had happened. She spoke clearly and calmly, listing the facts like she was giving a medical report. She told him about Patricia's refusal, about the lack of any written policy, about the other young people who had been served without parents. "Yes, we're still here," Dr. Thompson said. "We're not going anywhere." "I really appreciate this." She hung up and looked at Amara. "Help is on the way. Someone I trust is coming to handle this properly." They sat down on a bench near the window. Other customers came and went. Some glanced at them curiously. Patricia kept looking over from her window, clearly nervous. She whispered something to the other bank workers. They all looked toward Dr. Thompson and Amara. "Who did you call?" Amara asked quietly. "An old friend?" her mother replied. "Well, my college roommate's husband. Actually, he's a lawyer who handles cases like this. Civil rights cases. He's very good at what he does." Amara felt a mix of emotions. Part of her was embarrassed that this had become such a big deal. Part of her wanted to just leave and forget the whole thing. But another part of her, a stronger part, was glad her mother was not letting this go. If they walked away, Patricia would keep treating people this way. Nothing would change. Time moved slowly. Dr. Thompson sent a text message to the hospital, letting them know she would be late coming back. Amara sat quietly, watching people move in and out of the bank. Every few minutes, she glanced at Patricia's window. The woman was clearly uncomfortable now. She kept looking at the clock on the wall. After about 20 minutes, the bank doors opened, and a tall man walked in. He wore a dark gray suit that looked expensive. He carried a leather briefcase in one hand. The man had dark skin, short hair going gray at the temples, and an air of confidence that filled the room. People noticed him immediately. Dr. Thompson stood up, and the man walked over to them with a warm smile. "Janelle," he said, giving her a brief hug. "It's been too long." "Thank you for coming, James," Dr. Thompson said. She sounded relieved. "This is my daughter, Amara." The man shook Amara's hand gently. "Nice to meet you, Amara. I'm James Richardson. Your mom tells me you've had a difficult afternoon." His voice was kind, but serious. "Don't worry. We're going to sort this out." James turned and looked around the bank. His eyes took in everything. The layout, the workers, the cameras mounted on the walls. Then he walked straight up to the main counter. "I need to speak with the manager immediately," he said, to the nearest bank worker. His tone was polite but left no room for argument. "My name is James Richardson. I'm an attorney, and I'm here regarding a civil rights matter." The word attorney changed everything. The bank worker's eyes went wide. She picked up a phone and spoke quickly to someone. Within 2 minutes, a man in a suit came walking out from the back offices. He was in his 50s, with thinning hair and a confident walk, but his confidence seemed to falter when he saw James standing there with his briefcase. "I'm Gerald Hayes, the branch manager," the man said, extending his hand. "How can I help you?" James shook his hand firmly. "Mr. Hayes, I'm James Richardson, attorney at law. I'm here representing Dr. Janelle Thompson and her daughter Amara. We need to discuss an incident that occurred here today involving discriminatory treatment. I think it would be best if we spoke in your office, privately." Hayes's face lost some of its color. He glanced around at the customers who were now watching with interest. "Of course," he said quickly. "Please, follow me." They all walked toward the back of the bank, James, Dr. Thompson, Amara, and Mr. Hayes. Patricia watched them go, and Amara saw real fear in the woman's eyes now. They entered a large office with a wooden desk, filing cabinets, and several chairs. Hayes closed the door behind them. "Please, sit down," Hayes said, gesturing to the chairs. He walked around to sit behind his desk. He tried to smile, but it looked forced. James did not sit. He stood and opened his briefcase. "Hayes, is that your employee refused to process a legitimate withdrawal for Amara Thompson this afternoon? When questioned about the policy requiring parental supervision, your employee could not provide any written documentation of such a policy. Furthermore, while Amara was waiting, She observed two other young customers, both white, successfully complete withdrawals without parental supervision at the same employee's window. Hayes looked uncomfortable. He shifted in his chair. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," James interrupted calmly. "Dr. Thompson requested to speak with you over an hour ago, and your employee claimed you were unavailable. Yet here you are, available now that an attorney is involved. That's interesting timing, don't you think?" Hayes pulled at his collar. "I was in a meeting. I came as soon as I was told about the situation." "I see," James said. He wrote something in his notepad. "Which employee handled this transaction? Or, rather, refused to handle it?" Hayes picked up his phone and pressed a button. "Patricia, can you come to my office, please?" His voice sounded tight. A minute later, Patricia entered the office. When she saw everyone sitting there, especially James with his notepad, her face went pale. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Hayes?" "Yes, Patricia. Please have a seat," Hayes said. "This is Mr. Richardson. He's an attorney, and he has some questions about a transaction you handled today. Or didn't handle." Patricia sat down slowly. Her hands were shaking slightly. "I don't understand," she said quietly. James turned to face her. "Miss Patricia, can you explain why you refused to process Amara Thompson's withdrawal this afternoon?" She's a minor," Patricia said. "She needed a parent." "Is that your standard policy for all minors?" James asked. "Yes," Patricia said, nodding quickly. "Really?" James pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward Patricia. "According to your bank's website, youth savings accounts allow account holders aged 13 and above to make withdrawals up to $1,000 without parental supervision. Is that correct?" Patricia stared at the phone screen. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Let me ask you another question," James continued. "Approximately 30 minutes after you refused Amara's transaction, a teenage boy made a withdrawal at your window. Did you ask him for parental supervision?" Patricia's face turned red. I don't remember every transaction." "The bank has security cameras," James said calmly. "I'm sure the footage will refresh your memory." "And the young woman who came after him? Did she need a parent?" Patricia looked at Mr. Hayes desperately, like she wanted him to save her. But Hayes was looking at James with growing alarm. "Mr. Hayes," James said, turning his attention to the manager. "I've been an attorney for 20 years. I've handled dozens of discrimination cases. What happened here today is textbook discrimination. Your employee applied a non-existent policy selectively to a black minor, while allowing white minors to complete similar transactions without question. This is a violation of federal civil rights laws." Hayes's hands were shaking now. He loosened his tie and took a deep breath. "Mr. Richardson, I assure you, this is not how we operate. If there's been a mistake—" "This wasn't a mistake," James said firmly. "This was a choice. A choice that humiliated a young girl who was simply trying to access her own money. Money she saved for 3 years. And now we need to talk about how this bank is going to make this right." The room went silent. Patricia looked like she might cry. Hayes looked sick. Dr. Thompson sat with her back straight, her hand resting on Amara's shoulder. Amara felt strange, still upset about what happened, but also amazed at how quickly everything had changed once James arrived. James sat down finally and pulled out more papers from his briefcase. "Before we discuss solutions, Mr. Hayes, I need to inform you that I've already made some preliminary calls. I contacted 2 other families in this community whose teenage children also bank here. Both are black families, and both reported similar treatment from your staff. So this isn't an isolated incident. This is a pattern." Hayes closed his eyes. He looked like a man watching his career fall apart. James pulled out his phone again and placed it on Hayes's desk. "I'd like you to hear something," he said. He pressed a button, and a voice came through the speaker. It was a woman's voice, and she sounded upset. "Yes, my son tried to deposit his paycheck there last month," the woman said. "The bank worker asked him so many questions. Where did he get the money? What kind of job did he have? Was the check real? My son is 16 and works at a grocery store." It was humiliating for him. But when his white friend went to deposit his check right after, they just processed it. No questions asked. James pressed another button. Another voice played. This one was a man. "My daughter had a similar experience 3 weeks ago. She tried to make a withdrawal, and they treated her like she was trying to rob the place. Asked for 3 forms of identification. Made her wait while they verified her account. Then we found out from her friend's parents that their daughter uses the same bank, same account type, and has never had any problems." James stopped the recording and looked at Hayes. These families were afraid to complain. They thought nothing would change. They thought no one would believe them, but they believed me when I called. And they were willing to share their stories. And I'm willing to bet that if I make a few more calls, I'll find more families with similar experiences. Hayes wiped his forehead with his hand. He looked at Patricia, and his expression was angry now. "Is this true? Have you been treating customers differently?" Patricia's voice was small. "I was just trying to be careful. You always tell us to watch for suspicious activity." "Suspicious activity?" James interrupted. His voice was sharp now. "A 15-year-old girl trying to withdraw her own money from her own account is suspicious? But a white teenager doing the exact same thing is not? Please explain that logic to me." Patricia had no answer. She looked down at her hands. James stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the bank lobby, then turned back to face everyone. "Let me tell you what's going to happen next if we don't resolve this today. First, I'm going to file a formal complaint with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. That's the federal agency that regulates banks. They take discrimination complaints very seriously, especially when there's a pattern of behavior." Hayes's face went even paler. "Second," James continued, "I'm going to file a lawsuit on behalf of Amara Thompson and potentially several other families. The lawsuit will allege racial discrimination in violation of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The case will likely attract media attention. I imagine the local news would be very interested in a story about a bank discriminating against black teenagers. Please," Hayes said, his voice cracking slightly. "Let's not be hasty. I'm sure we can work something out." "I'm not being hasty," James said calmly. "I'm being thorough. Third, I'm going to request all security footage from today, as well as the past 3 months. That footage will show the pattern of discrimination. It will show how Patricia and possibly other employees treat white customers versus black customers. Courts love video evidence. It's very hard to argue with." Patricia made a small sound, almost like a whimper. Hayes shot her an angry look. James walked back to the desk and sat down. He opened his notepad and clicked his pen. "Now, those are the things I will do if we can't reach an agreement today. But I'm a reasonable man. I believe in giving people a chance to make things right. So let's talk about what it would take to resolve this matter without lawsuits and federal complaints." Hayes leaned forward, desperate. "What do you want?" "First," James said, "Amara deserves an apology. A real one. Written and signed by both Patricia and by this bank. An apology that acknowledges what happened here was wrong and discriminatory." Hayes nodded quickly. "Of course. Absolutely. Second," James continued, "Patricia needs immediate and mandatory anti-discrimination training. And if there are any similar complaints about her in the future, any at all, she should be terminated immediately." Patricia looked shocked. "But I've worked here for 12 years. Then you should know better," James said coldly. "You've had 12 years to learn how to treat all customers with equal respect. You chose not to." Hayes held up his hand to stop Patricia from speaking. I agree to that condition. Third, James said, this bank needs to implement a comprehensive review of all its policies and procedures. Every single employee needs training on equal treatment and anti-discrimination. And I mean everyone, from the tellers to the executives. This training should happen within the next 60 days. I can arrange that, Hayes said, writing notes quickly. Fourth, James continued, and his voice got harder. Amara's coding camp costs $800. The bank is going to pay that full amount as compensation for the distress, humiliation, and discrimination she experienced today. That's the least you can do after embarrassing a young girl who was simply trying to better herself. Hayes hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. Agreed. I'm not finished, James said. Fifth, this bank will make a $10,000 donation to the Urban Youth Development Center. That's a local organization that provides financial literacy programs to underserved communities. Consider it an investment in the very community you've been discriminating against. $10,000. Hayes's eyes widened. That was real money, but he looked at James's serious face and realized he had no choice. All right, he said quietly. $10,000. And finally, James said, the most important condition. For the next 2 years, this bank will provide my office with quarterly reports. These reports will show the demographics of every customer who was denied service or who filed a complaint. The reports will include the reasons for denial and how those complaints were resolved. This transparency will ensure that today isn't just a one-time fix. This will ensure real, lasting change. Hayes was sweating now. He loosened his tie even more. 2 years of reporting? That's a lot of oversight. It's necessary oversight, James said firmly. Because right now, I don't trust this bank to do the right thing without someone watching. You've shown a pattern of discrimination. Patterns don't change overnight. They change with accountability and monitoring. Dr. Thompson spoke for the first time since entering the office. My daughter saved for 3 years. 3 years of hard work and sacrifice. And she came here today with hope and excitement about her future. Your employee took that away from her in less than 5 minutes. Do you understand? The message that sends to a young black girl. It tells her that no matter how hard she works, no matter how much she saves, no matter how polite and prepared she is, someone will always see her as less than, as suspicious, as not worthy of basic respect. Her words hung in the air. Even Patricia looked ashamed now, though she still would not meet anyone's eyes. Hayes cleared his throat. You're right. You're absolutely right. This should never have happened. He looked at Amara for the first time since the meeting started. I am truly sorry for what you experienced today. There's no excuse for it. James pulled out a folder from his briefcase. I took the liberty of drafting a settlement agreement on my drive over here. I had a feeling we'd need one. He slid papers across the desk to Hayes. This document outlines all the conditions I just mentioned. If you agree to these terms, we can resolve this matter today. If not, I file everything tomorrow morning, and we'll see each other in court. Hayes picked up the papers and read through them quickly. His hands shook slightly as he turned each page. When he finished, he looked up at James. If I sign this, there won't be a lawsuit? No media coverage? This stays private? As long as you honor every single condition. Yes, James said. Break any part of this agreement, and all bets are off. I'll come after this bank with everything I have. Hayes picked up a pen. His hand hovered over the signature line for a moment. He looked at Patricia, who seemed to have shrunk in her chair. Then he looked at Amara, who met his eyes steadily. Finally, he signed the document. James took the paper, reviewed the signature, and then pulled out his own pen. As Amara's legal representative, I also signed. He wrote his name with a flourish. Dr. Thompson, as Amara's parent and guardian, you need to sign as well. Dr. Thompson signed carefully, her doctor's signature neat and precise. "Excellent," James said, putting the document back in his briefcase. "I'll have copies made and sent to everyone. Now, Patricia, I believe you have something to say to Amara." Patricia finally looked up. Her eyes were red. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "What I did was wrong. I judged you unfairly, and I'm truly sorry." Amara did not respond right away. She looked at Patricia for a long moment. "Thank you for apologizing," she finally said. "I hope you learn from this." Learn. "I hope you learn from this." Hayes stood up. "I'll have the cashier prepare a check for $800 immediately, and I'll personally write the apology letter tonight. You'll have it by tomorrow." James held up one finger. "Not just $800. Let me be very clear about this. The settlement agreement includes $800 for the coding camp, plus an additional $5,000 as a settlement payment to prevent any future lawsuit. That's $5,800 total, and I want that check made out today, before we leave this building." Hayes's mouth fell open. "$5,800? But I thought—" "You thought wrong," James said calmly. "Did you really believe that your bank could humiliate and discriminate against a minor, violate federal civil rights laws, and only pay for a coding camp? That would be insulting. The additional $5,000 is compensation for emotional distress, humiliation, and the violation of Amara's civil rights. It's actually quite reasonable. In court, we could ask for much, much more." Hayes closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He was trapped, and he knew it. Fine. $5,800. And the $10,000 donation to the Urban Youth Development Center. James reminded him. "That's a separate check. I'll need both checks before we leave today." "Both today?" Hayes looked panicked. "That's $15,800. I need to get approval from regional management. Then I suggest you make some phone calls," James said. His voice was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. "Because if we walk out of here without those checks, the settlement is void. And tomorrow morning, I start making my own phone calls. To the federal regulators, to the other families, to the media." Hayes grabbed his phone and stood up quickly. "Excuse me, I need to make those calls right now." He practically ran out of his own office. When the door closed, Patricia stood up slowly. "Can I go?" she asked quietly. "Not yet," James said. "Sit back down. We're not finished." Patricia sat back down, looking miserable. James turned to face her directly. "I want you to understand something. What you did today could have ruined this bank's reputation. It could have cost dozens of people their jobs, including yours. You're lucky that we're willing to settle this quietly. But make no mistake, you're being watched now. Every transaction you handle, every customer you serve, everything you do will be examined. One more complaint, and you're done. Do you understand?" Patricia nodded, tears running down her face now. "You never meant to be caught," James interrupted. "There's a difference. If you truly understood what you did wrong, you would have treated Amara fairly in the first place. But you looked at her skin color and made assumptions. You decided she was not trustworthy. You decided she was suspicious. And that's racism, Patricia. Plain and simple." Patricia sobbed quietly into her hands. Dr. Thompson watched her without sympathy. Amara felt strange seeing an adult cry like this. But she did not feel sorry for Patricia. Patricia had made a choice. And now, she was facing the consequences. The office door opened, and Hayes returned. He looked exhausted. "I spoke with regional management. They've approved the payments. The checks are being prepared now. They should be ready in about 15 minutes. "No." "Good," James said. "We'll wait." He looked at Patricia. "You can go now. But remember what I said." Patricia stood up quickly and left the office without looking at anyone. When the door closed behind her, Hayes sat down heavily in his chair. I want to be clear about something, Hayes said quietly. I didn't know this was happening. I run a clean operation here. If I had known Patricia, or anyone else was treating customers this way, but you should have known, James said. That's the problem. As a manager, it's your job to know what's happening in your bank. It's your job to create a culture where discrimination is not tolerated. It's your job to train your employees properly. You failed at all of that. Hayes had no response to that. He just nodded slowly. They sat in uncomfortable silence for a few minutes. Then, there was a knock on the door. A young bank worker entered with 2 envelopes. The checks you requested. Mr. Hayes. Hayes took the envelopes and opened them to verify the amounts. He showed them to James. 1 check for $5,800. Made out to Amara Thompson. 1 check for $10,000. Made out to the Urban Youth Development Center. James examined both checks carefully. He took pictures of them with his phone from multiple angles. These look correct, he said finally. He handed the check for Amara to Dr. Thompson. I'll personally deliver the other check to the development center and make sure they know where it came from and why. Dr. Thompson took the check and put it carefully in her purse. Thank you, James. I don't know what we would have done without you today. You would have fought just as hard, James said with a small smile. You've always been a fighter, Janelle. I just have more experience with banks and lawyers. Hayes stood up and extended his hand to James. I want you to know that we'll honor every part of this agreement. I'm going to personally oversee the changes. This will never happen again at my bank. James shook his hand but did not smile. I'll be watching to make sure of that. Remember, quarterly reports for 2 years. If I see any patterns of discrimination in those reports, we'll be right back here. Except next time, it won't be a settlement discussion. It'll be a lawsuit. Understood, Hayes said. He turned to Amara. I hope you enjoy your coding camp. And again, I'm deeply sorry for what happened to you today. Amara nodded, but did not smile. She still felt angry and hurt. A check and an apology did not erase what Patricia had done. It did not erase the embarrassment she felt standing in that bank lobby. But at least now, Patricia would face consequences. At least now, the bank would have to change. They left Hayes's office and walked back through the bank lobby. Amara noticed that Patricia was not at her window anymore. Another worker had taken her place. Several customers stared at them as they walked past. Amara held her head high. She had nothing to be ashamed of. Outside in the parking lot, James walked with them to Dr. Thompson's car. Are you okay, Amara? He asked gently. Today was a lot for someone your age to handle. Amara thought about his question. I'm okay, she said. I mean, I'm still upset. What she did was wrong. But I'm glad we didn't just leave. I'm glad you came and made them accountable. That's very mature of you, James said. He pulled out a business card and handed it to Amara. This is my card. If you ever need legal help, or if you just want to talk about what happened today, you can call me. And I mean that. Then, Amara took the card and looked at it. James Richardson, attorney at law, civil rights specialist. She put the card carefully in her pocket. Thank you. For everything. James smiled. You're welcome. You know, you handled yourself very well in there. You stayed calm. You observed what was happening. You asked for help when you needed it. Those are important skills. Have you ever thought about becoming a lawyer? Amara had not thought about that before. She was interested in coding and technology, but today had shown her something different. Today she had seen how lawyers could fight for what was right, how they could stand up against injustice and make people listen. Maybe, she said. I never considered it before, but after today, maybe I should. You'd be good at it, James said. He looked at Dr. Thompson. She has your determination, Janelle. That's a powerful thing. Dr. Thompson put her arm around Amara's shoulders. She's always been strong. Today just proved it. She looked at James. "Thank you again. I know you're busy, but you dropped everything to come help us." "That means the world to me. That means the world to me." "Your family," James said simply. "When Sarah told me what was happening, I grabbed my briefcase and ran." That's what family does. Sarah was his wife, Dr. Thompson's college roommate. They said their goodbyes, and James walked to his car. Dr. Thompson and Amara got into their car and sat there for a moment in silence. "How are you really feeling?" Dr. Thompson asked, turning to look at her daughter. Amara thought about it. She felt many things all at once. Angry, sad, tired, but also proud. Is that weird? "I'm proud that we stood up for ourselves. I'm proud that you called James. I'm proud that we didn't just let it go." "That's not weird at all," her mother said. "You should be proud. What Patricia did was designed to make you feel small and powerless. But you didn't let it break you. You fought back. That takes courage." Amara looked out the window at the bank. "Do you think things will really change? Or will they just wait until we're not paying attention anymore and go back to how they were?" Her mother started the car. That's why James insisted on the quarterly reports. That's why he made them agree to oversight for 2 years. He knows that people don't change overnight. But when they know someone is watching, when they know there are consequences, they're more likely to change their behavior. And sometimes, that forced change becomes real change. The next few weeks brought changes that Amara had not expected. The check was deposited safely in her account, and her mother helped her set up payments for the coding camp. But something else happened too. Word spread through their community about what had occurred at the bank. It started quietly. Dr. Thompson mentioned the incident to a colleague at the hospital who had a teenage son. That colleague told her sister. The sister told her neighbors. Within days, several families reached out to Dr. Thompson, sharing their own stories of being treated poorly at various businesses around town. Some stories were about banks. Others were about stores, restaurants, and other places. Each story followed the same pattern, people being treated differently because of their skin color. James Richardson started getting phone calls. Families who had stayed silent before were now ready to speak up. They had seen what happened with Amara's case, and it gave them courage. James took careful notes during each call. He documented dates, times, locations, and the names of employees involved. He was building files, gathering evidence, preparing for more cases if needed. True to his word, Hayes sent a written apology letter to Amara's home. The letter arrived in a formal bank envelope. Amara opened it with her mother watching. The letter was typed on official bank letterhead and signed by both Hayes and Patricia. It acknowledged that Amara had been treated unfairly and discriminatorily. It admitted that the bank's employee had applied non-existent policies in a selective manner. It apologized for the humiliation and distress caused. The letter was clear and direct, with no excuses or attempts to minimize what had happened. Amara read the letter twice, then put it in a folder with all the other documents from that day. She wanted to keep everything together. Someday, she thought, she might want to look back and remember this. The coding camp started in June. Amara was nervous the first day, but excitement quickly replaced her nervousness. The camp was held at a local university, and it brought together teenagers from all over the state who were interested in computer programming. Some students already knew a lot about coding. Others, like Amara, were just beginning to learn. The instructors were professional programmers who worked at technology companies. They taught the students about different programming languages: Python, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. They showed them how to build websites and simple applications. They talked about careers in technology and how to prepare for college computer science programs. Amara loved every minute of it. She stayed late most days, working on her projects even after class officially ended. She made friends with other students who shared her interests. For the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Everyone there was excited about learning. Nobody cared what she looked like or made assumptions about her. They only cared about ideas and code and solving problems together. One day, during lunch break, Amara told some of her new friends about what had happened at the bank. She explained how the employee had refused to give her the money for the camp and how a lawyer had helped her family fight back. Her friends were shocked and angry on her behalf. "That's horrible," said a girl named Lisa. "I can't believe someone would do that to you." "It happens more than you'd think," said another student named David. He was black too. And he nodded knowingly. "My dad always says we have to work twice as hard to get half as far. It's not fair, but it's reality." But Amara didn't just accept it, Lisa pointed out. She fought back. "That's amazing." Amara felt proud hearing that. She had fought back. With her mother's help and James's expertise, she had stood up for herself. And she had won. Meanwhile, changes were happening at First National Bank. Hayes was serious about honoring the settlement agreement. Within 3 weeks of the incident, every bank employee underwent 8 hours of anti-discrimination training. The training was conducted by an outside company that specialized in workplace diversity and inclusion. Employees watched videos, participated in role-playing exercises, and took tests to demonstrate their understanding. Patricia attended the training, though everyone knew why it was happening. The other employees were not happy about having to spend their time in training because of Patricia's mistake. Several of them stopped talking to her. She ate lunch alone in her car now. Her position had been changed too. She no longer worked at the customer service windows. Instead, she was moved to a back office where she processed loan applications. She had no direct contact with customers anymore. Hayes also hired a new assistant manager whose specific job was to monitor customer service and handle discrimination complaints. The bank installed a large sign near the entrance that read, "First National Bank values all customers equally. If you experience discrimination, please ask to speak with our customer advocacy manager immediately." A phone number and email address were listed below. James received the first quarterly report in September, exactly 3 months after the incident. He reviewed it carefully in his office, going through each page with a highlighter and notepad. The report showed the demographics of every customer who had filed a complaint or been denied service during those 3 months. It included the reasons for denial and how each situation was resolved. The numbers were better than before, but not perfect. There were still some concerning patterns. James called Hayes to discuss them. "I'm looking at your report," James said. "I see that 3 black customers were denied new accounts during this quarter. Can you explain the reasons?" Hayes sounded nervous on the phone. "All 3 had credit issues. We couldn't approve them based on our standard criteria." "And how many white customers with similar credit issues were denied during the same period?" James asked. There was a pause. "I'd have to check that." "Please do check," James said firmly, "and send me that information by Friday. Because if I find that you're applying credit criteria more strictly to black customers than white customers, we're going to have another conversation. A much less pleasant one." "I'll get you that information," Hayes said quickly. "I'll personally review every denial from this quarter." James hung up and made a note in his file. He would watch the next report closely. 1 quarter was not enough time to judge real change. But he would keep watching. He would keep holding them accountable. At home, Amara finished her coding camp and received a certificate of completion. She framed it and hung it on her bedroom wall next to her other achievements. But the camp had given her more than just a certificate. It had given her skills, confidence, and a clear direction for her future. She started thinking about how to use what she had learned. One evening at dinner, she told her parents about an idea she had. "I want to start a club at school," Amara said. "A financial literacy club. We could teach students about banking, saving money, understanding credit, and knowing their rights as consumers." Dr. Thompson looked impressed. "That's a wonderful idea. What made you think of it?" "What happened to me at the bank?" Amara explained. "I realized that a lot of people my age don't understand their rights. If something similar happened to them, they might not know what to do. They might just accept bad treatment because they don't know better. I want to change that. Her father, who worked as an engineer, nodded approvingly. Knowledge is power. If young people understand their rights and how financial systems work, they're less likely to be taken advantage of. Exactly, Amara said. She was getting excited now, talking faster. And I was thinking we could invite guest speakers. Maybe James could come talk about civil rights and discrimination. Maybe someone from a bank could explain how accounts work. We could make it really practical and useful. I think James would love to do that, Dr. Thompson said with a smile. Why don't you call him and ask? The next day, Amara called James's office. His secretary put her through to him. Amara, how are you? James sounded genuinely happy to hear from her. How was the coding camp? James quote, When after, it was amazing, Amara said. I learned so much. But I'm calling because I have an idea, and I was hoping you could help. She explained her plan for the Financial Literacy Club. James listened carefully, asking questions and offering suggestions. When she finished, he was enthusiastic. I think this is fantastic, James said. And yes, I would be honored to come speak to your club. Just let me know when you get it started, and I'll make time in my schedule. Really, thank you so much. Amara felt relieved and excited. You know what else? James added. I have connections with several banks and credit unions in the area. Good ones. Not like First National. I could probably arrange for someone from their education departments to come speak too. They often have programs for teaching financial literacy to young people. Amara could hardly believe her luck. That would be perfect. Thank you, James. You've helped me so much. And you keep helping me. That's what I'm here for, James said warmly. But honestly, Amara, you're helping yourself. You're taking a negative experience and turning it into something positive. That takes maturity and creativity. A lot of people would just stay angry and bitter. You're choosing to make a difference instead. After hanging up, Amara felt energized. She spent the rest of the afternoon planning her club. She made lists of topics to cover, potential speakers to invite, and activities the club could do. She designed a simple flyer on her computer, using skills she had learned at coding camp. The flyer read, New club starting, financial literacy for students. Learn about banking, saving, credit, and your consumer rights. All students welcome. First meeting September 15th. She printed 50 copies and got permission from the principal to post them around school and make an announcement during morning messages. The first meeting of the Financial Literacy Club took place after school in the library. Amara arrived early to set up chairs and prepare her notes. She was nervous. What if nobody came? What if people thought the club was boring? What if she was not a good enough teacher? But when students started arriving, her worries faded. First came 3 friends from her English class. Then 2 students she recognized from the hallway but had never spoken to. Then 5 more students, and then 7 more. By the time the meeting started, 22 students had shown up. The library chairs were all filled, and some students sat on the floor. Amara stood in front of the group, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath and began, Thank you all for coming. My name is Amara Thompson. And I started this club because I believe we need to understand money and our rights as consumers. A few months ago, something happened to me that made me realize how important this knowledge is. She told them about the bank incident. She kept her emotions in check, presenting it as a factual story. But she could see the reactions on her classmates' faces: shock, anger, sympathy. When she finished, several hands went up with questions. Did the bank worker get fired? One student asked. No. But she was moved to a position where she doesn't interact with customers anymore, Amara explained. And she had to go through training. Was it because you're black? Another student asked bluntly. Amara appreciated the directness. Yes, that's exactly what it was. She treated white customers differently than she treated me. And that's illegal. But it still happens. That's why knowing your rights is so important. A boy in the back raised his hand. My mom got charged extra fees at her bank last month. She tried to argue about it, but they said it was in the fine print of her account agreement. She ended up paying like $50 in fees. Is there anything she could have done? Amara pulled out some materials she had prepared. That's exactly the kind of thing we're going to learn about. Understanding bank fees, reading account agreements, knowing when to push back, and when the bank is actually following rules. Sometimes, banks do things that feel unfair, but are technically legal. Other times, they're violating regulations. We need to know the difference. The meeting lasted an hour. They covered basic topics, different types of bank accounts, how interest works, what fees to watch out for, and the importance of reading all documents before signing. Amara passed around handouts she had created with help from her mother. At the end, she told everyone about James Richardson and how he had agreed to come speak to the club. He's a civil rights lawyer, Amara explained. He's going to talk to us about discrimination in banking and other businesses, and what to do if it happens to you. That meeting will be in 2 weeks. Students left the meeting excited and engaged. Several came up to thank Amara personally. One girl, a junior named Taylor, asked if she could help co-lead the club. I'm really interested in finance, Taylor said. I want to study economics in college. I'd love to help you run this. I want to study, say. Amara was grateful for the help. That would be amazing. Thank you. Over the next few weeks, the club continued to grow. By the third meeting, they had 35 regular members. Word was spreading through the school. Teachers heard about it and began mentioning it in their classes. The principal called Amara to his office one day, and she worried she had done something wrong. But instead, he praised her. I've been hearing wonderful things about your club, Principal Martinez said. The teachers tell me students are asking smarter questions about money and financial planning. One student even asked her history teacher about economic discrimination during the civil rights movement. You've started something important here, Amara implied. Thank you, Amara said, feeling proud but also humbled. I just want to help people understand this stuff. Well, you're making a real difference, the principal said. Keep up the excellent work. When James Richardson came to speak to the club, he brought his whole presence with him. He walked into the library in another perfectly tailored suit, carrying his leather briefcase. The students sat up straighter when they saw him. He commanded respect without even speaking. James started by telling them about his own experiences with discrimination. He talked about being a young black man in law school, about professors who doubted his abilities, about firms that would not hire him, despite his excellent grades. He talked about the first discrimination case he ever took, how scared he was, and how good it felt to win. Then he talked about the law. He explained the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, and other important legislation. He made it understandable, using real examples from cases he had handled. He talked about Amara's case specifically, explaining the legal reasoning and what made it a clear case of discrimination. Here's what I want you to remember, James said, looking around at all the young faces. You have rights. Real, legally protected rights. And when someone violates those rights, there are consequences. But you have to speak up. You have to document what happened. You have to ask for help when you need it. Amara did all of those things, and that's why we were able to get justice. Hands shot up with questions. Students asked about everything from school discrimination to workplace rights to housing discrimination. James answered each question thoughtfully, never talking down to them, treating them like the informed citizens they were becoming. After the meeting, James pulled Amara aside. You've done something remarkable here, he told her. This club is exactly what the community needs. You're teaching young people to advocate for themselves. That's powerful. I learned from the best, Amara said with a smile. I learned from watching you. James reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. I brought you something. It's information about a summer internship program at my law firm. We usually only take college students, but I think you'd be a perfect fit. It's paid, and you'd learn about civil rights law from the inside. What do you think? Amara's eyes went wide. Really? You want me to intern at your firm? If you're interested, James said. You'd be helping with research, filing, maybe even sitting in on some client meetings. It would give you real experience in the legal field. And who knows? Maybe you'll decide to become a civil rights lawyer yourself someday. Amara thought about it. She still loved coding and technology. But she also loved what she was doing with the club, helping people, teaching them their rights, making a difference. Maybe she could do both. Maybe she could become someone who used technology to fight for justice. Yes, she said firmly. I'd love to do the internship. Thank you. Meanwhile, at First National Bank, the changes continued. Hayes received the second quarterly report from his staff and reviewed it carefully before sending it to James. The numbers looked better this time. Fewer complaints, more consistent application of policies across all customer demographics. But Hayes knew James would examine every detail, looking for any sign of continued discrimination. Patricia was still working in the back office. She kept her head down, did her work, and tried not to think about what had happened. But the incident had changed her. Whether she wanted to admit it or not, she found herself thinking about the assumptions she had made, the judgments she had passed, the harm she had caused. The training had forced her to confront her own biases, and it was uncomfortable. One day, Patricia overheard two other employees talking in the break room. They were discussing a customer who had been rude to one of them earlier. Some people are just like that, one employee said. You can tell just by looking at them that they're going to be difficult. Patricia felt something twist in her stomach. That was exactly how she used to think. That was the thinking that had led to the incident with Amara. She cleared her throat. Actually, Patricia said quietly, you can't tell anything about someone just by looking at them. I learned that lesson the hard way. The other employees looked at her in surprise. Patricia rarely spoke to anyone anymore. I made assumptions about a customer based on how she looked, Patricia continued. It was wrong, and it almost cost this bank everything. Maybe we should give people the benefit of the doubt, instead of judging them before we even talk to them. She left the break room after that, not waiting to see their reactions. But she felt something she had not felt in months, a tiny bit of self-respect returning. By the end of the school year, Amara's financial literacy club had become one of the most popular clubs at school. They had expanded their topics to include investing, student loans, entrepreneurship, and even cryptocurrency. Guest speakers came regularly: bankers, accountants, financial advisors, and lawyers. Each one taught the students something valuable. Amara graduated from high school 2 years later with honors. She had been accepted to several top universities for computer science, but she had also been accepted to a special program that combined computer science with social justice studies. That was the program she chose. At her graduation ceremony, James Richardson and his wife Sarah sat with Dr. Thompson and her husband. They had become close family friends over the years. When Amara walked across the stage to receive her diploma, they all stood and cheered. After the ceremony, James gave Amara a gift. It was a framed photograph from that day at the bank, not of the confrontation, but of Amara leaving the bank with her head held high, walking beside her mother and James. Someone had taken the photo from outside through the bank windows. James had obtained a copy. Where did you get this? Amara asked, surprised. A local journalist happened to be nearby that day, James explained. She saw us going into the bank and got curious. She never published anything, because we settled privately. But she gave me this photo. I thought, you should have it. Amara looked at the photo for a long time. She remembered that day so clearly, the fear, the anger, the humiliation, but also the strength she had found. She remembered deciding not to just accept what had happened. She remembered her mother's fierce protectiveness. She remembered James's calm authority and brilliant strategy. "Thank you," Amara said. "For everything. Not just for this photo, but for that day, and for all the days since then. You changed my life." "No," James said with a warm smile. "You changed your own life. I just gave you some tools and showed you how to use them. You did the rest." Years later, Amara would hang that photo in her own office. By then, she had founded a tech company that created apps to help people report discrimination and connect with legal resources. Her apps were used by thousands of people across the country. She employed a diverse team of programmers, designers, and lawyers who shared her commitment to justice and equality. She never forgot that day at the bank. She never forgot Patricia's dismissive look or the feeling of being judged unfairly. But she also never forgot how it felt to fight back and win. She never forgot the power of standing up for yourself and demanding better. The bank employee had ignored the black girl's request, thinking she could get away with it. But that black girl had a mother who would not tolerate injustice, and that mother knew a lawyer who understood exactly how to fix the problem. Together, they had done more than solve one problem. They had started a movement. They had inspired a young woman who would go on to help thousands of others face similar challenges. Sometimes, one moment of discrimination can lead to a lifetime of fighting against it. Sometimes, saying no to injustice is just the beginning. And sometimes, the people who try to make you feel small end up making you stronger instead. That was the real lesson Amara learned that day at First National Bank. And it was a lesson she would carry with her forever.